You've been lied to your whole life. You think fairness protects you, but fairness is the reason you keep losing. The more you beg for fairness, the weaker you become. That's not pessimism, it's reality. You were trained to believe that if you work hard, follow rules, and treat people right, life will reward you. But it doesn't. And the gap between what you were promised and what you actually get is exactly where your frustration, bitterness, and sense of powerlessness are born. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He didn't write about how people should behave, but how they actually do. And until you accept that the game is rigged toward power, not fairness, you'll keep losing to people who understand reality while you cling to the illusion that life is supposed to be just. You've been told your whole life that fairness is your shield, that if you're a good person, work hard, keep your head down, and play by the rules, the universe, or society, or good karma, will eventually pay you back. But look at your own life for a second. Has fairness really been the deciding factor in who gets promoted, who gets chosen, who gets heard, who gets power? You've watched people who cut corners, bend rules, and play politics get ahead while you're still waiting for someone to notice how fair you've been. That gap between what you were promised and what you actually see is not just painful, it's dangerous. It makes you bitter, resentful, and passive. It trains you to believe that the problem is out there in an unfair world, instead of in your own lack of strategy and power. Machiavelli saw this centuries ago. He wrote about people as they are, self-interested, emotional, inconsistent, not as we wish they were. And until you start seeing the world through that lens, you will keep walking into situations expecting justice and walking out feeling blindsided. This video is not about making you colder or crueler. It's about making you stronger. We're going to break down why begging for fairness actually strips you of power, how understanding human nature gives you a strategic edge, and how you can build real strength through competence, emotional control, and clear standards for your own success. By the end, you won't be asking, "Why is life so unfair to me?" You'll be asking, "How do I win even when it isn't?" If that shift hits you, write it in the comments right now. I choose strength over fairness. Number 1. Fairness is a comforting illusion that weakens you. It feels good to believe the world is a balanced system where effort is rewarded, good intentions are recognized, and justice eventually shows up and takes your side. That belief lets you sleep at night, but it quietly destroys your power during the day because it trains you to depend on something you do not control. When you assume fairness will sort everything out, you develop what psychologists call an external locus of control. You start believing your success depends on how others treat you, how systems should work, and whether people behave the way they're supposed to. So, when you don't get the promotion you earned, when someone else takes credit for your work, when a client ghosts you after you over-delivered, you don't ask, "How do I adapt?" You ask, "Why is this so unfair?" And you sink deeper into frustration. Machiavelli would tell you that this is exactly the mindset powerful people exploit. Men are ungrateful, fickle, liars, and deceivers, he wrote, not to depress you, but to warn you. If you assume people will automatically be fair, honest, and loyal, you become predictable. You become easy to deceive, easy to manipulate, easy to ignore, because your actions are based on how you think people should behave, not on how they actually do. And when your mood rises and falls based on whether you feel fairly treated, you hand your emotional state to everyone around you. They don't even have to hurt you intentionally. All they have to do is act in their own self-interest, and you crumble because you expected something nobler. This doesn't mean you should become cruel or abandon your ethics. It means you stop using fairness as your safety blanket and start using capability as your shield. Instead of depending on fair treatment, you depend on your ability to create value that's hard to ignore, to solve problems others can't, to build relationships that are mutually beneficial instead of morally owed to you. Instead of waiting for recognition, you focus on becoming so competent that even people who don't like you have to respect what you bring to the table. That shift from fairness dependence to capability dependence is where real strength starts. It demands emotional regulation, so you stay effective even when you feel disrespected. It demands strategic thinking, so you read situations as they are, not as you wish they were. It demands value creation, so your results speak louder than your complaints. And it demands better questions from you. When something unfair happens, instead of spiraling into, "Why do they always treat me like this?" you ask, "What can I learn from this? How do I protect myself from this next time? What skill or leverage do I need so this kind of move doesn't work on me again?" The world is not fair. People are not consistent. Systems are not designed to guarantee your happiness. But once you stop begging for fairness and start building capability, you're no longer at the mercy of any of that. You become someone who can create their own outcomes inside an unfair game. Number 2. Understanding human nature gives you a strategic advantage that people trapped in fairness fantasies will never have. Most people walk through life assuming others are rational, grateful, loyal, and fair, and they're constantly shocked when reality doesn't match that script. They're surprised when someone switches sides, when a friend disappears as soon as things get hard, when a boss throws them under the bus to protect their own image. Machiavelli wasn't trying to be edgy when he wrote that people are often ungrateful, fickle, and self-interested. He was giving you a manual for how humans actually behave when pressure, fear, and opportunity collide. This doesn't mean everyone is evil. It means everyone has the capacity for selfishness when the stakes are high enough. And if you ignore that, you walk into situations blind. The person you're depending on to do the right thing may be quietly calculating what's best for them, not what's fairest for you. The colleague you assume will be loyal might stay loyal only as long as loyalty pays better than betrayal. The partner you think will always be honest may start bending the truth the moment lying removes a threat or opens a door. When you accept this, not as cynicism, but as realism, you stop building your plans on wishful thinking and start building them on patterns you can predict. You realize people are both cooperative and competitive, both generous and selfish, and which side shows up depends heavily on incentives, consequences, and context. That's where your power is. Instead of hoping others behave well, you create conditions where good behavior is rewarded and harmful behavior quietly costs them something. You design agreements, boundaries, and relationships where it makes sense for people to be honest, where it pays to be loyal, where fairness isn't a moral miracle but a smart choice. This isn't manipulation, it's leadership. It's understanding that people respond more reliably to incentives than to lectures about principles. And it doesn't just apply at work or in business. It applies to friendships, family, collaborations, even how strangers treat you. Before you step into important conversations or commitments, you start asking different questions. What does this person really want? What do they fear losing? What do they stand to gain or risk in this situation? How might they behave if things go wrong, not just when everything is smooth? When you think like this, you see the moves coming that would blindside everyone else. You're not shocked when someone shifts their loyalty under pressure, because you already saw the incentive structure pushing them that way. You're not destroyed when someone chooses their interests over yours, because you never built your entire future on the assumption that they wouldn't. Understanding human nature also makes you better at bringing out the best in people instead of constantly being hurt by the worst in them. When you know what motivates someone, recognition, security, autonomy, money, status, belonging, you can frame your requests and collaborations in ways that align your goals with theirs. You stop begging for fairness and start aligning interests. You stop asking, why won't they just do the right thing? And start asking, what structure, what agreement, what incentive would make the right thing the obvious thing? That's how you become strategically kind instead of naively kind. The world doesn't reward people just for believing in fairness. It rewards people who understand how humans really think, feel, and act, and who can navigate that mess with clear eyes and steady emotions. Your advantage will never come from pretending people are better than they are. It will come from seeing them clearly, accepting the full spectrum of human nature, and then moving through that reality with intelligence instead of illusion. Number 3. Complaining about unfairness signals and creates weakness. The moment you start talking to everyone about how badly you've been treated, how they did you wrong, how the system isn't fair, you think you're making a moral point, but what you're really doing is advertising that you see yourself as a victim. It feels good in the moment because complaining gives you emotional release, it gets you sympathy, and it lets you position yourself as the righteous one in an unjust story. But while you're venting, the people around you are silently sorting you into categories. Some feel sorry for you, but pity rarely turns into power. And others see you as someone who can be pushed, ignored, or used, because your instinct is to complain, not to act. Machiavelli understood this brutal truth about human nature. People respect strength and decisive response, not wounded narratives. He warned that people take revenge for serious injuries, but keep testing you when you only react to small ones with noise and no consequences. That's exactly what happens when you habitually complain. You train others to see you as someone who absorbs unfairness, talks about it endlessly, but doesn't change anything. Worse, you train yourself into that identity. Every time you replay how unfair something was, you deepen the neural groove of "things happen to me, I have no control," and you reinforce an external locus of control that kills your ability to think clearly and act strategically. While your mind is locked onto how wrong they were, it's not asking the questions that would make you stronger. What does this unfair move reveal about the person or system I'm dealing with? What pattern is this a part of? What leverage was I missing here? What boundary did I fail to enforce? The alternative to complaining is not silence, it's strategy. It's processing your emotions privately, then choosing responses that actually improve your position, gathering evidence, adjusting your approach, documenting your work, building alliances, setting firmer boundaries, or in extreme cases, walking away and repositioning yourself entirely. It's the difference between going to a coworker to moan about how your boss screwed you over and going to a mentor to say, "Here's what happened, what am I not seeing, and how do I make sure I'm never this exposed again?" One keeps you trapped in the identity of the wronged underdog. The other moves you into the role of a strategist who learns from every blow. This doesn't mean you tolerate abuse or systemic injustice in silence. There are moments where speaking up, documenting, and pushing back publicly are necessary. But even then, your goal is not to broadcast your pain, it's to achieve a specific outcome. You're not just telling the world, "It's unfair." You're taking steps that increase your leverage, protect your future, and make repeat offenses costly for the people involved. So the next time you feel that surge of outrage and the urge to run to someone and unload about how unfair it all is, pause and catch yourself. Ask, if I complain right now, what changes? Who gains power from this, me or the situation? Then, flip the script. Write the situation down, strip out the drama, and look at it like Machiavelli would, as data about human nature, power, and incentives. From that place, decide your next move. Remember, in an unfair world, your complaints don't scare anyone. Your strategic responses do. Number 4. Real personal power comes from competence, not entitlement, and this is where most people quietly sabotage themselves without even realizing it. Entitlement whispers, "I deserve better because I worked hard, because I'm a good person, because I've suffered, because I followed the rules." And on the surface that sounds reasonable, even noble, but underneath, it's just another way of handing your fate to other people and begging them to recognize your worth. Competence, on the other hand, doesn't care whether the world is fair. It only cares whether you can consistently create results that are too real, too valuable, and too effective to be ignored. Machiavelli understood this long before corporate performance reviews existed. Any power that depends on other people's goodwill, approval, or generosity is fragile, because people change, alliances shift, and admiration evaporates the moment it's no longer convenient. If your sense of power comes from "they should treat me better," you're standing on sand. If it comes from "I know how to do things other people can't, and I can prove it with results," you're building on rock. Look at how this plays out in your own life. You get passed over for a promotion, and entitlement screams, "This is unfair. I deserved that," which might be emotionally true, but strategically useless. Competence asks a different set of questions. What skills, what relationships, what track record would make it almost impossible to overlook me next time? How do I become so effective that choosing someone else looks irrational? One mindset focuses on what you are owed, the other focuses on what you can build. And in an unfair world, only one of those will actually protect you. Power rooted in entitlement is always waiting for someone else to finally do the right thing. Power rooted in competence is busy making itself indispensable. That doesn't mean you become a soulless productivity machine. It means you deliberately develop capabilities that give you leverage. Deep expertise in a valuable skill, the ability to solve complex problems under pressure, the emotional intelligence to diffuse conflict and win allies, the discipline to execute when others stall out. It also means understanding the market you live in, whether that's your industry, your company, or your social environment. What skills are becoming more valuable? What problems are screaming for solutions? Where are people constantly stuck, frustrated, or overwhelmed? Instead of saying, "Someone should fix this," competence-based thinking says, "I'm going to become the person who can fix this." And every time you do, your power compounds. You solve one hard problem, and people start coming to you for more. You pull one project out of chaos, and your name gets attached to reliability. You build one system that makes things smoother, and suddenly you're not just another replaceable piece, you're the person who makes everything work. That's how competence quietly turns into influence. Machiavelli would tell you that rulers stand on 3 things: perception, force, and utility. In your world, force is your ability to act, perception is your reputation, and utility is how useful you actually are when it counts. Entitlement tries to get recognition without building real value. It wants the title without the capability. Competence flips that. It cares more about becoming useful than about being praised, knowing that, sooner or later, people need what actually works. This doesn't mean you accept mistreatment with a smile. Being competent doesn't turn you into a doormat. It gives you options. When your power is based on entitlement, your only play is to beg for fairness. When your power is based on competence, you can negotiate harder, set boundaries, walk away from toxic environments, or move to places where your value is recognized because you know you can produce. So ask yourself honestly, where in your life are you secretly relying on "I deserve" instead of "I can deliver"? Where are you waiting for recognition instead of building undeniable capability? The unfair world doesn't care how long you've waited or how much you've suffered. It responds to leverage, and competence is leverage. Remember this line and burn it in. Competence creates sustainable power. Entitlement creates dependency. One keeps you forever hoping someone will finally treat you right. The other makes you the kind of person who can shape their own fate, even when no one is playing fair. Number 5. Strategic thinking always beats moral outrage in an unfair world, no matter how justified your anger feels in the moment. When something clearly wrong happens to you, someone lies, cheats, steals your credit, cuts you out, or twists the story, you're going to feel that surge of indignation, that fire in your chest that screams, "This isn't right." That emotion is human, and it can even be useful, but only if you refuse to let it steer the wheel. Moral outrage is obsessed with what should be. Strategic thinking is obsessed with what is and what you're going to do about it. Outrage wants to expose, shame, and punish. Strategy wants to understand, adapt, and win. Machiavelli would tell you that everyone sees what you appear to be, but few understand what you really are. And that line is a warning. If you let your anger explode in public, people might see passion, but they'll also see instability and lack of control. You might feel powerful calling someone out, ranting about how unfairly you were treated, or posting your story everywhere. But ask yourself, does this actually increase my leverage or just drain my energy? Strategic thinking starts with the same emotion but channels it differently. Instead of immediately reacting, you pause and dissect the situation like a tactician. Why did this person feel safe doing this to me? What incentive structure made this move attractive? What did I fail to see about their character, their pressure, their interests? What weaknesses in my position did this unfair act expose? Sometimes the smartest move is a quiet adjustment, documenting everything, tightening boundaries, building alliances behind the scenes, making your work more visible, or positioning yourself so that the person who wronged you eventually becomes irrelevant. Other times, the strongest play is a controlled, deliberate confrontation where you're calm, clear, and armed with facts, not just emotions. And sometimes the most powerful decision is to walk away from a rigged game entirely and invest your energy where you can actually build influence and opportunity. Outrage wants immediate emotional relief. Strategy wants long-term advantage. The world will never stop giving you reasons to be angry, especially if you care about justice. But if you let that anger run your mouth and dictate your moves, you become easy to provoke, easy to manipulate, and easy to sideline. When you think like Machiavelli, you flip the script. You process the anger privately, then ask, what response here increases my power? What choice makes me more dangerous next time someone tries this? That's how you stop being the loud victim of unfairness and become the quiet architect of your own advantage. Number 6. If you really want to stop being controlled by unfairness, you have to create your own standards for success instead of waiting for the world to hand you a scorecard and a gold star, because as long as your sense of achievement depends on external recognition, titles, praise, applause, rankings, likes, promotions, you are volunteering to be ruled by systems and people who do not care about being fair to you. That's the trap. You work hard, you sacrifice, you improve, but if nobody notices, you feel like you're failing, and suddenly your entire emotional state is at the mercy of other people's attention span, moods, and politics. Machiavelli would call that exactly what it is: dependence on fortune, on chance, on forces you don't control. He warned that whoever builds their power on things outside themselves is building on mud, and that's what external validation is: soft, shifting ground that sinks under you the moment conditions change. Internal standards flip that completely. Instead of asking, "Did they reward me?" you start asking, "Did I advance my capabilities? Did I keep my word to myself? Did I create real value? Did I move closer to the life I'm actually trying to build?" Your metrics become things you can directly influence: hours of deep work, skills acquired, difficult conversations handled well, systems you built, problems you solved, boundaries you enforced, the way you showed up under pressure. When you live by those standards, unfair treatment stings, but it doesn't define you, because your identity is anchored in what you're building, not in what they're giving you. That doesn't mean you ignore feedback from the outside world. You still pay attention to what markets reward, what people respond to, where opportunities open or close. But you use that information to refine your strategy, not to decide whether you're allowed to feel like a success today. You become your own judge, your own coach, and your own scoreboard. Practically, this means sitting down and getting painfully clear about what matters to you beyond status symbols. What kind of person are you trying to become? What capabilities do you want to master? What kind of impact do you want your work to have? Then you translate that into concrete, trackable standards. How often you train your craft, how consistently you execute your routines, how bravely you take on discomfort, how honest you are with yourself when you fall short. Every time you hit those internal targets, you rack up a quiet win that no unfair boss, broken system, or blind audience can take away from you. Over time, this creates a different kind of confidence, not the fragile confidence that comes from being praised, but the grounded confidence that comes from knowing, "I'm not where I want to be yet, but I'm not guessing about whether I'm moving. I can see my progress in my own numbers." That's the kind of confidence Machiavelli would respect, because it's rooted in self-mastery, not in reputation. And here's the twist. When you start living by your own standards consistently, external recognition usually shows up anyway, but now it's a side effect, not your oxygen supply. You're no longer chasing fairness. You're building undeniable momentum. So ask yourself right now, in one area of your life, work, health, money, relationships, what would it look like to stop measuring yourself by how fairly you're treated and start measuring yourself by the standards you set? Write it down, and if you're serious, put it in the comments. From today on, my success is measured by my standards, not their approval. Throughout this video, we've torn apart the illusion that fairness will save you and replaced it with something far more powerful: strategic strength grounded in reality. You've seen how clinging to fairness creates weakness, because it makes you dependent on other people's sense of justice instead of your own ability to act. You've seen how understanding human nature, the way Machiavelli described it, self-interested, inconsistent, driven by incentives, gives you an edge over those who still expect everyone to do the right thing. You've seen that complaining about unfairness only broadcasts victimhood, while strategic responses turn every slight into intelligence you can use. You've seen that real power comes from competence, not entitlement, from what you can actually deliver, not from what you think you're owed. You've seen why strategic thinking beats moral outrage when it comes to getting real results, and how creating your own standards for success frees you from being emotionally controlled by who does or doesn't recognize you. Put all of that together, and the message is simple. Stop begging the world to be fair, and start becoming someone who can win even when it isn't. That means shifting from reactive to proactive, from emotional to strategic, from asking, why are they doing this to me? To asking, how do I become stronger because of this? It means treating Machiavelli not as a villain, but as a brutal teacher of how power and people actually work. The question now is what you do with this. Will you go back to hoping someone finally gives you what you deserve? Or will you start building the capability, discipline, and clarity that make you dangerous in the best way? If this resonated with you, hit like so more people see it, share it with someone who's stuck waiting for life to be fair, and subscribe for more content that teaches you how to navigate the world as it is, not as you wish it was. And if you're ready to make this shift real, write it in the comments and carry it with you. I choose strategic strength over fairness, dependence.